Hi, let's talk about text sizes today. Different countries use different standards and codes when it comes to engineering drawings. So it's really important that if you're using Revit in order to create your drawings, you are able to customize the text style. So today in this episode, we are going to learn how to customize the text style to suit your project requirements. Let's begin. In Revit, the text is under Annotation tab on the text panel here. The text tool is quite smart than what we have in CAD. For example, here I have a couple of details available on this sheet. This particular wall section detail is at about 1:50, whereas these two kitchen and toilet details are at 1:25. But if you take a closer look at the text notes that are placed on these views, you'll see that they almost look the same size, regardless of the differences in scale. If I choose this particular text note, it's the same style of 2.5mm Arial, and if I go back into this kitchen detail and choose this particular text note, you'll see it's the same text style. So the 2.5mm size that they are indicating is already annotative. So Revit already knows that regardless of the scale of the geometry, the text always needs to remain 2.5mm on paper. So on paper, when you print your drawings, your text notes are always going to be readable and always going to be 2.5mm for this particular text style. Now, the actual size of the text that you want to use for your projects may really vary depending on the standards that you're using. But generally, the practice is that the text notes and the dimensions that you use for your detailed drawings is between 2.5 to 3mm or 1/8 of an inch. The axis numbers or the view names or such primary titles that you use for your drawings is usually between 5 to 6mm, which is about 1/4 of an inch. So if you keep these values in mind, your text notes are always going to be readable on paper. Now let's create a text style of our own. And I'm going to go back into my detail at A for this wall section. Let's go to Annotation tab and use our text tool. Let's go to the type properties and set these parameters to set our text style. Let's say we want to create a text style that has 5mm of text size. So I'm going to duplicate, and so I'm going to call it 5mm primary titles. And I'm going to say OK. Let's change the text size to 5. You can also choose to change the font that if you need. You can also choose the tab size, make it bold, italic, underline, or change the width factor of your letters. And I'm going to say OK. And let's type in text note here. So you can see here that we have now a new style that is using 5mm text size. Now, if you want to create a text that has leaders such as this, let's go into Annotation and Text and choose any of these three options to create leaders. Let's start with the one segment. The first click will be for your arrow position, and the second is for your text. So when you try to come near one of the previous text note that you've put in, you'll see the Revit is already giving you an alignment where you can start creating the second note that aligns with the first one. So you'll see this text note and this text note are in perfect alignment with each other. Let's go back to Annotation, Text, and try to create a two-segment arrow. It's also quite similar. Let's choose the first position for the arrow, second where you want to stop for the first segment, and next where you want to add your text. I'm going to call it two-segment arrow. You can always come back to your text, move the position of your text note using this move tool, or use any of these blue dots in order to reposition the arrow. You can change a two-segment arrow into one by realigning the blue dots, or change one segment arrow into two segment by redefining this blue dot here. Let's go back to the text, choose curved arrow, and I'm going to select the arrow position and the text position. Say this is curved arrow. You can also come back to this text note and change these blue dots in order to change the position of your leader. You can also add leaders to those text notes that previously did not have one. For example, this text note does not have a leader, but I can select it and I have the option of adding more leaders on the left or on the right, or multiple on the left or multiple on the right. By pressing this remove the last leader option, you can also remove these multiple arrows in the same sequence you added them. Now let's go back to its type properties and talk about the graphics category. This is a place where you change its color. For example, I want to change everything to red And once you change that color in your type properties, all the instances of that text note change that color to red. The line weight parameter really controls the line weight of the leader. So for example, if I change this to 6, you will see that it becomes thicker. Now currently this particular text style uses the background as opaque. So if I take my text note and put it on over a geometry, you'll see that it hides the geometry that is on the background. If I change the type properties, the background parameter to transparent, you'll see that now I'm able to see my geometry that is in the background of my text note. So if your text notes are overlapping with your model geometry, then you may try to use the background as transparent. Let's go back to the type properties. Change the show border parameter to yes, and you'll see how the border appears around the text box. The next parameter is the leader border offset. The leader border offset parameter really controls the distance between your leader and the text node. For example, if I make this 0, you'll see that the border actually touches the letters that you have in your text. If I make it about 5 millimeters, you'll see it's quite far from the letter that you have in your text node. So let's put it back to 2 millimeter, which looks pretty much all right to me. Let's talk about leader arrowheads now. Here in this list, I have a few options available. So currently I'm using an arrow which is 30 degrees in its angle. Now if I want to change it to diagonal 2 millimeters, you'll see how it changes to a diagonal arrowhead. Let's say I want to change my arrowhead to a filled dot of 2 millimeters in size. How do I do that? I really don't see an arrowhead that has filled dot of 2 millimeters. So if you want to customize a leader arrowhead, you'll have to go back to Manage, Additional Settings. Under Annotations, you have Arrowhead Settings. This is where you can customize your arrowheads. Let's go back here, and I'm going to duplicate and call it filled dot 2 millimeters. And I'm going to use my arrow style as dot. I'm going to fill my tick because I want a filled dot. The tick size is going to be about 2 millimeters, and I'm going to say OK. So now I've created a new arrowhead, but I still need to apply that to my text node. So let's go back here, type properties, and I'm going to choose the leader arrowhead as a filled dot 2 millimeters. And I'm going to say OK to this. So you'll see that now I have new custom arrowhead. Now let's talk about the multi-line paragraphs. How do we create a text that has multiple lines in it? Now in Revit, there is no separate tool for creating a single line or multiple lines. It's the same text node in which you can simply press enter at the end of the line to start a new line. This is line 2, enter, line 3, enter, line 4. And simply press outside in order to complete a text command. Now here in this text node, everything is left aligned. So I can go into my instance properties of this particular text node and change the horizontal alignment to center or right, depending on how you would like to have it. You can also select one of the text nodes, right-click, select all instances visible in view. So it selects all the instances visible in that view of this particular text type and change the horizontal alignment of all of these instances at once. Let's change everything to right, and you'll see that it all changes at once. So to create a custom text style is quite simple. Let's go into Annotation, Text, and edit the type properties. Duplicate a new text style, give it a name, change the graphic settings and text settings such as color, background, leader, set your text size and fonts, change it to bold, italic, underline, depending on your project requirements. Once you have done your settings, and choose any of these 4 tools in order to create a text with or without leaders. In the next episode, we are going to talk about customizing hatch patterns, which are called fill region in Revit. So please make sure that you have subscribed. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to comment here on this video or contact me through the link in the description box. So I hope to hear from you, and I'll see you in the next one.